All right, thank you, Fred. Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Rogers. This is the January 10th meeting of the Groundwater Advisory Committee. A little introduction as we get started. This open meeting of the Groundwater Advisory Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on July 16th, 2022. All members of the Groundwater Advisory Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The Act allows the Groundwater Advisory Committee to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brian Furman.
Here.
Diane Goulner. I'll give Diane a chance. While I wait for Diane, Anthony Zaitin.
Here.
And Teresa Capabianco.
Here.
And Diane, if you can hear us and go off mute, just acknowledge you're still there. And then for staff, we had Fred Litchfield.
Here.
Thank you very much. Also acknowledge Melanie Rich here for taking minutes of the meeting. All right, let's see if we can get Diane to confirm. There she is.
Yeah, finally.
Great, we've confirmed Diane's here. Thank you so much. Getting to our first order of business on the agenda. We have Karen Patty and Chris Flood to consider the petition of Artemis Veterinary LLC for a special permit to open a veterinary clinic on the property located at 318 Main Street, that's map 47, parcel 93, in the Groundwater Protection Overlay District Area 3. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Fred, you want to set the table on this one for us?
Sure. Artemis Veterinary Clinic is looking to occupy some of the space at 318 Main Street. The application is for a special permit within Groundwater Overlay Area 3. There are some chemicals that will be stored within the operation of the business that triggers the need for the special permit. Otherwise, a business itself, just a plain business that doesn't have that, would be allowed by right in a Groundwater Area 3. The applicant is not proposing any changes to the outside of the building or to the parking lot, so there's no site work being done. Everything is internal, and the permit tonight that we need to discuss is about how the operation of the business will work and what safeguards we might need to recommend to the special permit granting authority for the issuance of the special permit in order to make it safe for our groundwater supply. So with that, I guess let Chris kind of introduce himself and the applicant and kind of run us through how the business will work, and then we can get on to talk about the nitty-gritty of the chemicals and how we're going to protect the groundwater.
So good evening to start. My name is Christopher Flood. I'm an attorney from Marlborough, and I'm representing Karen Patty. And Karen's also on your screen, and she's going to hopefully open a new veterinary clinic at the building at 318 Main Street. And Fred, I know that you had asked us to provide a list of all possible hazardous waste and chemicals that would be used. And Karen updated it again today with the location of where each of the chemicals will be stored. I just want to make sure you got that because I think we both sent it to you today.
I did, and I appreciate you both sending it on, and Karen had sent something over the weekend as well. And I've been looking at those, and I just will need to confirm with you. I didn't share that with the board because there was a couple of versions, and I've now got quite a stack of paper that I was trying to simplify roles for the groundwater committee. But I think that the crux of it is the amount of chemicals that you have is the maximum I saw was like 17 gallons. I don't think it even it might even be less than that with the last version that you sent me. And what we want to do is have the actual list, the volumes, and the cabinet, the specifics of the cabinet itself, model number, that kind of thing that we can look for and actually indicate in the permit. We will, once we agree on all that, we will ask the committee if they would be willing to recommend approval, provided I can verify the actual list between now and when the ZBA meets. And if they're agreeable with that, I think we're in good shape. So I don't know. There was a couple of things you had given me a lot of information, so I appreciate it. And I did go through it all. The MSDS sheets, what I was looking at, there's a section 6 that talks about accidental release measures. That's the area where I went to decide if something, to recommend whether something should go into a cabinet or was okay to be stored in a closet somewhere without containment. And so I pulled out all the chemicals, all the items that showed something on the section 6 that said something to the effect of, they had a couple of different wordings that they used, but the one that triggered my pause was prevent further leakage or spillage from reaching the drains, sewers, and waterways. Discharge to the environment must be avoided. So if it said that or something to that effect, that's triggered that I put that chemical or that product in a separate pile. And then I tried to match that up with the list that you gave me, and I wasn't able to do that for every one of them. Some of the product names didn't, as someone who doesn't work in the veterinary world, didn't match up when I was doing it. So I will need a little bit of assistance figuring out. I have like 6 or 7 sheets that I couldn't match to something. And
Okay.
you can
How
help
can I
me. We can go through that. I don't think we need to do it at the meeting. I think we can talk a little bit more general about getting together and making sure that list is complete, making sure that the model number on the cabinet is something that we can, we know will hold, let's say the number is 17 or 18 gallons, make sure that that cabinet can hold that 17 gallons. Go ahead.
Obviously, this is a list of our liquids. Our largest liquids are going to be distilled water and Tide.
Okay, so
Yeah.
if the MSDS sheets for both of those, and I don't have them, I have them all sorted, but I don't have it readily available at my fingertips. If those MSDS sheets don't show prevent it from spilling into the drain or the waterway, then that doesn't have to be in the cabinet, and then the volume could be less. That's what I want to sit down with you at some point, let's say next week, because I got a couple of things thrown on my lap today. And we can get together, we'll take the list, we'll put it in a Word format, I'll slide it into a letter, and then as long as the committee is amenable to that arrangement, if not, we'll just continue the meeting and we'll come back next month and we'll hash it all out. But I think we're very close. I think the volumes are minimal, the risk is minimal, your floor plan looks to be appropriate laid out. It's not like we're getting large quantities of hazardous chemicals delivered in the parking lot that we have to worry about a big spill. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I guess I'd like to hear from the committee to see if they have any questions or if they're not amenable to that that I've laid out for them. And once the list is created, I will offer to send the letter that I'm going to send to the special permit granting authority back to the committee for comments if they like before it actually goes to the ZBA in this case.
If I may interject for a second, Fred.
Sure.
So on the new the list that we gave you today that Karen put together, we did try to add a location of where each chemical is stored. So for instance, some of these things are used when she's conducting surgery. My understanding is of all of those are in self-contained jars or sealed canisters, and usually require a needle to go in to pull it out. I'll let Karen explain it better than that. So we tried to give you an understanding of where all of these different chemicals will be used in her practice as a veterinary clinic.
Most of the medications that we use that are considered hazardous chemicals look like this. You know, it's smaller than a bottle of aspirin, and it does have a rubber top that has to be punctured. All of these are also allowed to be dropped.
Oh,
They're made that way on purpose. Thank
so
goodness.
they're not glass. I thought
They
they
are
were
glass.
glass. Oh, they are
They
glass.
are glass. They're
Oh.
just very thick glass because things drop.
They do.
I drop
That's
things.
what we worry
Yeah.
about.
Yes, as you should. But yeah, so this is the kinds of things that we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, then we're in agreement, I think, and I think what the only thing the cabinet needs to have in it is all the items that can be stored when they're not being used. So you don't use that chemical every day. When it's not being used, it's secured somewhere safely. The cabinet or the
Or the lockbox. Yeah.
lockbox, one of the two. I think we just need to create a list of which ones are going to go in there, and we want to pare it down so that the cabinet's not any bigger than it actually has to be. I don't need it to store distilled water if there's no hazard to distilled water spilling. And if that takes that 17 gallons and makes it 5 gallons, even better. And then the cabinet is smaller and can be stored, under a table or something where it's less obtrusive than, big, massive cabinets that's taking up a whole closet or something. So I guess at this point, I'd like to hear from the committee if they're okay with that thought process, so that I can tell if we're going to proceed or if they want us to get all this ironed out before they feel comfortable making a recommendation.
Yeah, quick question on that then. So in the application itself, like pages 8 through 21 or so had the list that are pretty much the medicines you use or the cleaning products that are used. And if even with the updates, it was still pretty consistent with that list is what we're talking about in terms of the rows. And we just need columns to indicate the quantities and where it's stored.
Yep. The list that came initially, I reviewed, and there were several things that had caused me pause because of about the spill release measures that I had talked about. The list over the weekend came back with quantities, volumes of each product. And then I indicated that I still had some concern about the cabinet and some of the MSDS sheets. And then the list got revised again to have not only the volumes, but the hazard level and also the location within the floor plan as to where that would be stored. So again, if it's amenable to the committee, then I can work with them and then send you all what we've come up with for the final list. But it is everything. They haven't added anything. Some stuff may have been taken away from that list that was originally submitted. I did spare you all the 400 to 500 pages of MSDS sheets to go through, but I did go through them. I did put them in different piles, which ones were a concern to me and which ones were not, based upon that item 6 or toxicity level or exposure to staff or safety personnel in the building. So
good stuff. Any comments or questions from other board members or committee members? Yes, Teresa.
Thank you. Is there a procedure in place, or do you have a plan for what you're going to do with animal waste on your outside area?
Animal waste, we treat just like we treat our own animal waste, and it goes in the trash bag and trash.
Okay.
The animals will be in one specific section. The property used to have a daycare facility, and in the back was a fenced off area, and that is going to be part of the veterinary clinic. So any animals will be escorted out there monitored, cleaned up, and then brought back inside. So there's no free roaming or anything like that. And they'll be in a confined, basically hidden, because I understanding it's behind the building. So you can't see it from the street or on either side.
Okay. Fred, I remember when we had the individual who was looking to do a dog, I think a dog kennel or a dog daycare down behind the fire station down in that area. There was a question as to how the animal waste was going to be disposed of. Is that a concern here in this case because perhaps the volume of animals isn't as great?
Well, all we were looking for at that time with that project was a little bit different in that those, I believe, if I remember correctly, those animals were going to be in a fenced-in area, off leash, and kind of being able to spend time out there, not
Right.
necessarily monitored the entire time. So there was a concern about how much waste would be generated. That doesn't seem to be the case here. They're taken, as Chris indicated, they're taken out, they're monitored while they're out, and then they're brought back in. So there's a reasonable expectation that whatever happens while they're out there could be picked up and brought back in.
Okay, and so I guess the question is the anticipated method of disposal of that waste okay with
Yes,
wire? Okay.
it can go in the trash. One question that leads on for me is there any medical waste that requires separate disposal other than regular trash?
Oh, yes, absolutely. For example, and that's something that's obviously standard to any clinic, but for example, we have our sharps containers that, of course, these are picked up by a medical waste disposal company, as well as our reverse distribution and our chemical waste, which all has to, and that would be medical waste medicines, especially controlled substances. All of that has to be extremely diligently logged, weighed, verified, and receipted. And then you submit that to the DEA. So there's very, very strict measures that we have to follow for all of that. Not just, for this, but to keep our license.
So what we would be looking for to confirm all that would be copies of the contract that you might have with that medical waste company that comes and pick it up. I assume it's one company that kind of takes care of various things, or is it multiple?
We at the moment have one.
Okay.
But seeing as since we're right now such a small business, we haven't had to use them yet.
Okay.
but we do have Medco. Yes.
If you have a contract, then I will ask that you give us a copy so that we know there's somebody licensed to take all this stuff away properly and that it's not just being shipped out the back door.
I'm sorry. I thought I sent you a copy of their information. I apologize for that.
You know what? I went through a lot of stuff. I may have missed it.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. I will make sure I point that out in the letter to the ZBA. Did you have any, well, I guess, is there anyone else on the committee who has any questions or concerns about going forward with a recommendation that I verify these items before sending a letter on to the ZBA? Or would you like me to do all that and have them come back to you before going on to the ZBA?
Any other members comment before I? My opinion is that, given the comprehensive list of the chemicals that was provided and the other information in the application, I think we can trust and assume that the finalizing the volumes and some of those aspects will happen. I'm comfortable, being able to, based on your finalizing your review, Fred, to move forward and continue with the kind of the draft conditions that you have proposed.
Okay. How about from the applicant side? Was there anything else in the letter that caused you concern? The one thing that I think is important for you to be aware of is that there's a condition in our bylaw that the special permit that you're granting would get granted, provided that you get that far, is that the proponent for a building or occupancy permit must demonstrate on an annual basis to the building department and Board of Health that all applicable federal, state, and town of Northborough licenses, permits, and standards for the handling, use, storage, and disposal of any regulated materials have been obtained or met. So that would include whatever conditions the ZBA puts on your special permit. So once a year, you'd have to send a letter to the building and health department, they're in the same office, verifying that you're still in compliance with all of that. So that's really the most important thing beyond the list of chemicals and the cabinet. So as long as that doesn't cause you any angst, I think we are pretty well there.
Yeah, so Fred, just for the, kind of completeness, there was also from your letter requesting the waiver for the signing by a technically qualified expert, the certification.
The applicant did request the waiver, and we just need to, in our recommendation to the ZBA, recommend that they grant the waiver. You can't grant the waiver as an advisory committee, but you can recommend that they do. And again, the volume of chemicals, the fact that nothing's changing in the parking lot, the amount of material that's going to be delivered on a routine basis is minimal. The exposure for a spill in the parking lot and into the drainage system is minimal. So my recommendation to all of you is that you could recommend that and be comfortable if it were granted by the ZBA.
And I think that anybody opposed to that?
No.
No. Yeah, seeing none. So that was the only other item that I hadn't seen that we discussed.
There's one other item. It's not an issue. It is something I wanted to point out to you. The box was checked, if you will, is that this site was previously before the Groundwater Committee and the ZBA for a special permit to modify the septic system. And there was a lot of concern about the volume of septic loading on that system and the way it was done. They wanted to increase the size of the septic system beyond what the zoning bylaw allows, and so they installed a nitrogen sensitive system. It was fairly complicated, and there were very specific volumes that the building was limited to. I just want to, and I will point it out in the letter to the zoning board, that the septic loading as a result of the veterinary clinic is still within the limits of the initial special permit that was granted for this property. So in case anyone was recalling that discussion, there was a very set amount of for the septic loading, and they are within that amount. So I neglected to point out that they did satisfy that. It was something that we had talked about prior to the filing. It was in the application. They are well within the limit. Nothing in the original special permit or the previous special permit has to be altered in that respect.
Didn't that affect the restaurant at that time more than anything else?
The restaurant was the one who wanted to add more seats, and so they needed to expand the septic system. And we were concerned because it's in a groundwater area about the nitrogen from the septic system getting into the groundwater. They installed that fairly complicated drainage septic system in order to offset that extra nitrogen. And as a result, there was a very specific limit. I think it was 9,000 gallons for the entire building. And I had asked the applicant to verify that it currently does not exceed that amount. And they did provide a sheet which was in the application. Yep, 9,000 was the maximum available. And to date, there's still a 2,161 gallon per day surplus. So even with the change in tenants there, they're still under the limit that they were originally allowed. And it's just an opportunity when someone new comes in, needs a special permit, for us to verify that everyone is still aware of that limit and abiding by it.
I have one last question or comment. Are you going to have any overnight people in your, everybody's in and out during the day, all the dogs?
Daytime, it's not 24-hour.
Pardon me?
It's just a daytime clinic. It's not 24-hour.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Hearing none. Then Fred, we just need to a motion then to recommend the conditions from your letter be placed should the zoning board of appeals grant the permit.
Yeah, I could help with that if you like.
Thank you.
I guess the motion would be to recommend to the zoning board of appeals approval of this project with the conditions as outlined in my letter, and verification of the actual volume of each of the chemicals to be stored within the cabinet and the items to be stored within the lockbox prior to the meeting. And again, I will work with the applicant, get that list together, send you the pertinent information so you all can see it before it goes to the ZBA.
Great. So, okay, entertain that motion. I think Anthony might do a so moved.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Teresa. Has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? We have to do a roll call vote. Teresa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Diane?
Aye.
And Brian?
Aye.
Scott is also aye. That is unanimous.
Okay, I will be in touch. The town hall is closed on Monday, so I'll be in touch. If you don't hear from me by Tuesday or Wednesday, give me a buzz and we will get together next week, hash out the last couple things. You can explain to me which one of those 6 or 7 chemicals I couldn't put into the matchup against that list that you had that had the it was actually, that was the most helpful. You put it in alphabetical order, which was very helpful, the substances and the location. And so I gave each of those products a number. I took each MSDS sheet and tried to match a number to that chemical. And then I only had maybe 10 that I couldn't match up. So, and I also have those separate into piles of, they're not a problem, those that need to be in the cabinet. And then if you could just help me finalize that, and then we get the actual model number on that cabinet, I think we'll be good to go. I will, as long as the committee is agreeable, I will, in the letter to the ZBA, indicate that the cabinet will be model number ABC or equal, so that if the time comes to get it, you can't get that one, you can get something else that has the same volume of containment. You don't have to search around for one particular one.
Brett, when we went to give you the safety data sheets, it turned out that it was about 600 pages, so I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Then we figured that
Part
a
of the
list
job.
that let Karen put together a very comprehensive list, which seemed to minimize the pages and make life a lot easier for both you and us.
Well, putting them in alphabetical order made a big help, to be honest, because I can spell, but the pronunciation's off. So anyways, I think that we're there. I think the application was thorough and complete. And I apologize for missing that contract, but I must have got shuffled in between the MSDS sheets somewhere. But I think we're good. I'll see you all next week, you two next week.
Please feel free to reach out by email. We'll schedule time to come visit with you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Ward.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm going to I'm gonna bring in, I'm gonna take Chris and remove him. Where'd he go? Did he go? Oh, he's gone. Okay, I'm gonna bring in Tom Reardon, Ksenia Flores, and I think this is Chris Flores.
And I'm seeing everybody connect up. So this next on our agenda, consider the petition of Ksenia Flores and Chris Flores for a special permit to open a day spa at the property located at 27 South Street, Unit 3, Map 63, Parcel 173 in the Groundwater Protection Overlay District Area 3. And so, Fred, you want to set this one up for us?
I'm sure. 187 South Street is just a couple hundred yards in from Main Street as you head down South Street towards Westboro. It's an existing building with many businesses located within it. The applicant is proposing a day spa, and there are some chemicals in the operation of that spa that according to the MSDS sheet should not be released to the environment. And so some storage, some containment is necessary in order to obtain the special permit. They are not proposing any changes to the exterior of the building or to the parking lot. So it's very similar to the last application, with even less volume of materials that are of concern. So with that, I will let Ms. Flores and Mr. Reardon kind of give you some more details. They did supply a list of products today and some MSDS sheets the other day. My review of the products puts at about a half a gallon of the list that came to me today. There are various creams and masks and other such things that spas might use. I'll let them take it from there unless you all have questions for me before they go forward.
No, let's open it up. Yeah, good evening, Tom. Yeah, any response to you've seen the draft memo that Fred drew up. Any response to those items?
Fred did ask for the list of the chemicals. They're about 13. And as he said, it's less than a half a gallon, about 60 ounces. They come in small plastic containers. So none of these are classified as hazardous, but they are recommended to avoid release into the environment. So if you had questions about the actual operation of the day spa, Ksenia would have to answer those. But if you had any technical issues relating to the site or the building or containment, the other thing that was Fred was requiring is some kind of spill containment cabinet, which you would store these 13 chemicals in that cabinet. And I think she probably would want to have some extra capacity depending on how her business fluctuates.
Tom, would the extra capacity be for additional volume of the chemicals that are on the list or additional chemicals that might come out?
I think both would be the wisest way to handle that, is to have an oversized cabinet. So if there were other chemicals that came along that you wanted to try after they were reviewed and appropriate, or if her business expands, then she might want to have that additional storage capacity.
Okay. Okay, I think we can talk about that.
And we would locate that on a site plan and submit that to Fred for review.
Again, what I need from the committee is confirmation that they're agreeable to have you and I and the applicant work together to finalize the list, get the specifications on the cabinet, and then be able to make a recommendation to the ZBA. If the committee is not comfortable with that, then we'll need to come back next month and finalize it with this committee before making a recommendation to them. But Let's see if there's any other questions from the committee.
None for me. Anyone else? Teresa?
What is currently in the space, and if there's nothing in it, what was last in that space?
Well, the space is currently vacant, and I believe it was used for professional offices.
Okay.
I think 4 of the 6 spaces are professional offices now. There's also a dentist, and which is categorized as service, and
Yep.
then also the spa would be categorized at a service.
Okay. And are there going to be like facial peels or anything involving that type of chemical where you end up with chemical waste, or is it all massage therapy?
I can't answer that. Maybe Ksenia could
Yeah,
respond.
hi. Yeah, I can answer that. No, nothing where the chemical peels will go into the water.
Okay. It all goes into what, regular trash, medical waste?
Yes.
Trash? Okay.
The only thing that will go into the water is the face cleanser, because everything else is removed by either the cotton rounds or towels, but nothing will go into the water.
Okay. Fred, this is town sewer, right?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay. Okay.
Is there laundry service, or do you do the laundry for the towels on site? Do you have it all taken off and they take care of it off site?
No, there's no laundry, and I'm planning on using disposal.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Just to clarify that, if I may, Mr. Chair. So when you say you're planning to use disposal, you're going to have a professional company come and pick up those towels and take them off site? Or
No,
they're
I'm
going to
sorry.
be
I meant
disposable, like you're throwing them into the trash?
yes, disposable.
Okay.
If I will be using towels later on, I will take them and wash them somewhere else.
Okay. Any sheets or linens?
Ton of
No,
sewer.
that would be disposable.
Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none. All right, so Fred, similarly, similar conditions as the prior applicant that would be applied to this, given the volumes and the types. I'm comfortable, having you work through the details as this goes forward to the ZBA.
The applicant also has requested a waiver on that analysis by a technically qualified expert. And again, it's on town sewer. There are no changes to the exterior of the building or the parking lot. I see no reason why the committee couldn't recommend to the zoning board of appeals that they grant that waiver. Again, the risk hazard here is very low. It's stuff that you put on your body, and hopefully it's not too toxic, and that people will be fine. It seems like I might add a condition that indicates no laundry service on site. So it's either disposable towels or laundry to be taken off site and cleaned somewhere else, so that there's no chance of the chemicals that shouldn't be exposed to the sewer getting drained, put into the sewer system. But again, the MSDS sheets are pretty minor in the hazard level, because it says shouldn't be exposed to the environment. It doesn't say don't put it down the sewer. So I think we're in pretty good shape.
Excellent. So I'd entertain a motion to recommend approval of this application with the conditions listed in Fred's letter from January 6th.
I would so move and add to that that we add the condition that there be no laundry on site.
Thank you.
So
Is there a
moved.
second? I may have missed Anthony. Did you do a second on that?
I didn't, but second.
Sorry, didn't mean to force you through. I saw your box light up and I thought that was a second. Moved by Teresa, seconded by Anthony, a roll call vote. Teresa
Aye.
and Anthony.
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Scott is also an aye. That's unanimous, 5-0.
Okay, I will talk to you next week, Tom. What I'm looking for is if that list is it, we just match that list against the MSDS sheets, and then we will put together a recommendation to the ZBA with what we talked about. If you have some ideas on that cabinet, the model number that we could specify in the recommendation would be helpful. And as with the previous applicant, we will do an or equals so that in the event it becomes hard to find that one particular cabinet, we find a way to make sure that the wording is broad enough so that you're not limited to one product or one specific item, something that says a reasonable amount of excess storage would be good. Maybe the committee wants to amend their motion to include a maximum not to exceed on that volume. They are proposing a half a gallon and they would like to have room to expand, and I don't want to limit them to a half a gallon, but that's all I have for data.
I mean, if we're talking about, increasing it to a gallon, to give them, then that's something that I'd be comfortable putting forward in the conditions that go to the ZBA.
You Kensia and Tom, do you think that's reasonable? Is a doubling of the volume of items enough for your anticipated business expansion in the future? Or because if you were to go over the amount that they limit you to, you'd have to come back to amend the special permit once it's in there and listed as a condition.
So I think Cassina will have to address the volume issue.
In the beginning, it will be definitely enough. I'm not sure if we can go a little bigger. That would probably be good. If that's possible, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, I think even if we were to go, 4x and 2 gallons, that's still such low volumes, right? That I don't think we're looking at any risk.
And if Fred, could you send me a link to spill containment manufacturers, and we'll come up with a solution.
Yeah, I think you might be hard pressed to find a cabinet that only provides containment for 1 gallon. So
right.
The number could be 4 or 5 gallons even without being of a concern to me. So
okay.
I throw it out there. I don't want you to have to come back in a year and say, hey, we're doing really well. We've got, a few extra employees in the spa, and we're taking over Northborough, and everyone's getting a facial daily. I want to make sure that it's commensurate with the hazard, not with restricting the business. So I just want a reasonable number.
Yeah, are there some fairly common units that come in like 5 gallon or?
Yeah, I would think so. My sense is, I can't specify one off the top of my head, but I would say the smallest reasonable one might be 5 gallons.
Yeah, so I think that would be our lower limit, the maximum of the lower limit of the things that you can buy.
Yeah,
right?
If the committee were to amend that motion to include a storage of up to 5 gallons, provided that the list of chemicals doesn't expand beyond the products similar to what was proposed. So if there's something of higher hazard or something drastically different, then we would want you to come back and talk to us. But again, they're skincare products. They shouldn't be overly alarming, is my sense.
Right, so I entertain a motion to also add to the conditions a maximum volume of 5 gallons.
So moved, but just, do we have to do that as a motion to amend the prior motion first and then actually amend it?
We probably, yeah,
I
we
think
should
so.
then. Yeah.
Okay. All right, sorry, it's occupation.
No, it's good. It's good to do it right.
Can't help myself. All right, so motion, I'd make a motion to amend the prior motion regarding this application.
And is there a second?
Second.
Great, we'll do a roll call. Teresa,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
and Scott is also aye. So I'll entertain an updated motion.
Then I guess I would make a motion to amend the prior motion to increase the volume of permitted chemicals to up to 5 gallons. Is that right?
To require the containment to be no more than 5 gallon.
Okay. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. This will be a roll call vote as well. Diane,
Yes.
Teresa,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Scott is also aye.
Okay. Again, Tom, I'll be in touch. I'll try to send you something tomorrow or Thursday about the cabinet, where you can find one, and then we'll get together next week and kind of iron it all out and prepare the memo. I will send both of the memos back to the committee just for your awareness of what I'm sending to the ZBA, and then I'll forward it on to the ZBA unless there's some concerns from the committee.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. You too. Okay, there's only a couple other things on the agenda.
I'm sorry. I can leave, right?
Yes, you
Or-
can.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a nice night, Cynthia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So the minutes, the next meeting date, and then a discussion about the future of the committee.
Sounds good. Any comments or corrections to the minutes of October 11th? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for their approval.
I move that we accept October 11th of 22 minutes for the Groundwater Advisory Committee.
Second.
Moved by Diane, seconded by Anthony. Simple roll call vote. Anthony,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Teresa,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Scott's also aye. Thank you very much. Next meeting date, if necessary, Fred, you're thinking February 14th?
I am, unless that's a problem for all of you romantics in the audience or on the committee.
I'm having surgery the day before, so I likely won't be here. If I'm here, it'll be medicated, so you probably don't want me.
No
Is
comments.
there a slot in the following week, Fred, that might be open? Any competition?
Well, we have some flexibility because I get to host your meetings. I don't need to drag a host in for a webinar, so we have some flexibility there. It's really more about all of your schedules because you are all on various boards and committees. So the February, it could be, for me, it could be potentially later that week. The following week on Tuesday, the 21st is a planning board meeting. But the 26th would be available as far as I'm concerned, or the
27th.
the 22nd or the 23rd, Wednesday or Thursday. Or that Monday might be the holiday. When is the President's Day? President's Day is probably that Monday, the 20th.
The 20th.
So we could, when the Board of Selectmen meet on the 12th or on the 13th, on that Monday, the 13th,
Right.
I actually will be away myself on the 13th. So we could do it the later of the week, the 15th or the 16th, depending on when the drugs wear off. And or we could meet the following week on Wednesday or Thursday, but Tuesdays are pretty well booked. I slot you for the second Tuesday of the month to avoid conflicts with other boards, but Wednesdays and Thursdays are pretty flexible as far as I'm concerned. But then again, I don't know what other commitments you all have.
Any conflicts for Thursday, the 16th?
And again, it's if necessary.
Oh, it's fine with me.
That gives you a little more time, Teresa.
Yeah, I should be okay by then.
Okay. Let's look towards the 16th then, February, also a 6 o'clock start.
Okay.
And then Fred, if it turns out there is any conflict, let us know. And if your schedule changes, please let Fred know.
Yes. Okay, and then that just leaves the discussion about the future of the committee.
All right, great. So I think, Anthony, you've been in the discussions with the planning board. I think Bryant, at the Water and Sewer Commission, this topic might have came up as well in an earlier bit. And really, for folks that haven't seen some of the draft language, planning board is looking to update the associated zoning bylaw that both defines the composition of the Groundwater Advisory Committee and indicates that applications that involve the groundwater overlay districts are then forwarded to this committee for review. So in discussing of streamlining and simplifying some of that, the proposed change would remove this committee and have the special permit granting authorities, receive the kind of technical evaluation that Fred does directly, and not then go through a separate committee for the groundwater reviews. This, as I mentioned, has come up through the planning board as they look at their zoning bylaw changes over the last few of their meetings. It was discussed a little bit at the Water and Sewer Commission. It was discussed last night with the Select Board. Discussion here tonight, as we want to take that up, planned for discussion in the Conservation Commission on Thursday and the Board of Health on next Tuesday. So an opportunity for the boards and committees and commissions that are the members, the 5 of us, to have a chance to discuss it in their respective meetings. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at that draft language, think about the dissolution of this committee, but if you hadn't had some opinions on that, it'd be great to hear it amongst the 5 of us, see if there's issues in that dissolution. I have some thoughts on that I shared last night, but before sharing that, I'd like to hear from you all if there's any considerations or thoughts you have on that.
I say, I was out on site inspections this morning with Vinny and Greg Young, and I brought the topic up and indicated that Fred does such a good job of outlining things and keeping it constructive so that there's not a lot of wavering and you don't have applicants coming in and throwing their hands up in despair because they don't know what they're doing because everything is pretty much laid out. And then it was brought up to me if, let's say Fred left for some reason, he decided to go live on the moon or whatever, that all that history that he has is lost because there's been changes in not each year, but every once in a while there are changes in the committee. So those of us who have histories, like Bryant probably has much more than I do, good, but you're not getting this full scope of it, I guess is what I want to say. If you had to start all over again with a new town engineer who didn't know the background and everything, and you had dissolved the committee.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. I think to Anthony, I think kind of the mitigation on some of that too, coming from the planning board, is if there were complex proposals, right? That to enlist technical assistance, peer review type processes, if there's ever a project that couldn't be evaluated by the town engineer.
Right. And I think we determined, or the discussion last time was, if Fred felt that it was beyond his technical capabilities, that he would say, yeah, we do a 53G, I believe they call it, where you're going to do a peer review. Some of the other discussions around it is that there's only one other town in the entire state that has a groundwater committee. And it also streamlines the process for the applicants in terms of not having to meet with an additional board. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, thanks for that. Teresa, you had a comment?
I have a couple actually. So this issue has come up before a couple of times, and it's concerning to me because one, it puts Fred already has enough to do, and now you're taking the weight of us five and sort of putting that on him as well. I know that we rely on Fred a lot for guidance and how we are managing each application that comes before us. But when I read this memo from Scott Charpentier that was shared with us regarding the basically the legislative history of this board, it made sense to me. And it's kind of what I'd been thinking, is that the town intentionally put together a board consisting of 5 separate disciplines for a reason. And it's because those 5 separate disciplines bring those individual perspectives to each application that comes along. And sometimes I might have nothing to say, but Bryant may have an awful lot to say about that application, and vice versa, based on the discipline that we're representing here on this committee. If this committee is disbanded, those perspectives are gone. And now the town looks to Fred to take care of it. And sure, we can do peer reviews and expert studies in lieu of Fred's review, but honestly, what you're doing is, instead of asking the applicant to come to us for one night, you're asking the applicant now to pay thousands of dollars to an expert to do a review, which I think is unduly burdensome. We already are having trouble getting people to want to come to this town and develop business here. It has become very onerous and burdensome to come into this town. I think we start dismantling committees and giving all the power to 1 or 2 boards, and that's it. I think we're going to have a bigger problem. I think it's really important that these 5 disciplines remain independently represented apart from the special permit granting authority, so that this review that is very specific to our groundwater is done in the most appropriate way. That's it.
Brian, any thoughts from your perspective?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. I can see the advantage where to the applicant, and sometimes it is onerous, like the woman that just had the spa, to pay an attorney and come in and go through another meeting. And Fred does a great job, and I don't think, I think his input is always very good. And I'm not sure, I can't remember the last time we've second guessed too many things that Fred has done in his review memo. And the original intent was to protect the groundwater supplies in this town because we had our own private wells. And with the build out that's occurred in the last 10 years and the safeguards that have been put in place as far as retention basins and the cabinets and storage of chemicals, et cetera. I don't see where it's as a significant potential problem as it was, now that we get all our water from MWRA. And with the
Clean Water Act revisions, I can't see us going back and activating the wells that we have. It would be just too expensive. It would just, the economy of scale would just kill us. But I do think when I read the revisions, I'm interested in getting Fred's thoughts too on that. Ensuring that each of the current committee members' boards are informed and they get a copy of the application, or even if it's Fred's says, this has a big wetlands impact or a Board of Health impact, to kind of guide it to make sure those boards get it, and maybe he meets with them to explain it. Would streamline things a little bit, I think. I mean, Fred puts in a lot of time and on some of these, and like the 500 MSD sheets that he just went through. So I have mixed feelings about it. I can see both sides, and I was thinking that even the larger projects, I don't foresee any real big projects that would need an outside review. I mean, the calculations are such that they don't change. It's just the volumes and the square footage and things like that change. I mean, we're not going to have a nuclear facility proposed or something like that would just be beyond Fred's capabilities. So I'd be interested in his thoughts on the larger projects in particular. If how large is large, and B, the likelihood that they would be proposing something that needed a real extra careful review, or something that we needed an expert in a particular area. I can't envision that, but Fred sees a lot more of it than I do.
Well, through the chair, I don't envision the need for peer review to come out of the size of the project. Drainage is drainage, whether it's 100 acres or 2 acres. Still
Right.
the same concept, same computer models, is just a larger scale. What I see the peer review being important is if the hazard level of what's being manufactured or stored on site is significant. Recently, the planning director and I were reviewing, along with the conservation agent, the proposal for the renovation of the football fields at Algonquin, and they're proposing a turf field with recharge under the field and different material that causes some concern to the environment. They have a PFAS system of putting the surface water back into the ground below it. And there's been some some questions about how that might impact the groundwater down the road. And so we actually got together and recommended to the planning board that we get a peer review for that portion of that project. Not about the drainage, not about the parking, not
Right.
about the building project itself, but the impact of how that drainage system under the football field would impact the groundwater, both short-term and long-term. And so that's the kind of thing that triggers the need for peer review in my mind. And so that's when staff would get together and say, hey, this is kind of outside our area. We recommend to the planning board or to the ZBA, whichever the case is, that that we get a peer review done. In terms of streamlining the process, Lori did share with all of you, I believe, the draft of the language. It hasn't really been before the planning board yet, so it's very fresh. She and I just sat down and said, okay, here's what the bylaw says. If the committee were to be stricken from the bylaw, what would we need to do to make that clear, but not take away from the intent of the bylaw in protecting the groundwater supply and the various thresholds that we have, and came up with what you got. it involves, it currently does. All of your boards and committees get copies of the applications, or the staff person that represents all of you gets them. And how they get distributed to all the members of the board is kind of a topic for discussion going forward, but it'd be the staff person's responsibility to get it to you so that you as a committee, each of your individual committees could decide if you want to have it on as an agenda item, if you all each want to get a copy of the application and make comments to the special permit granting authority, or if you wanted the applicant to come before you. So then if you take that a little bit further in terms of streamlining, it actually kind of backfires, because each of those 5 committees could then say, we'd like the applicant to come to our meeting and make a presentation, because it's not my job to present to each of your committees what the applicant is proposing. It's really the applicant's responsibility to make sure that it's clear to people who want to comment on it. Or you could all come to the public hearing that the special permit granting authority is going to hold and then make your comments known at that public hearing. There's a number of different things that could play out there. I kind of went around your question, so I'm not sure if I got to the answer or not that you're looking for.
So that's what, as I was looking at this, I was thinking it at 2 levels, right? And so one is, the technical engineering level that Fred handles so well, and that's fine. And then if there's increased engineering or expertise, technical expertise needed, get peer reviews and the such. But I think, Teresa, the way the term you use, the disciplines, right? That each of us represent, it might be financial and administration that might come from the select board. It might be health policy and other elements like that come from the Board of the Health, and Bryant, water and sewer, and Diane, conservation, and Anthony, of course, the planning. So I think that's what I wanted to make sure was considered, is that kind of connective tissue that this committee represents between all those disciplines, and that, severing that connection, right? We have less eyes on an application, and less ability to layer on the expertise we have in each of those disciplines, or our representation of the experts in those disciplines. Fred, I think you bring up a good point, right? If we look at that draft language, and by the way it's written now, copies of the applications, rather than just going to the Groundwater Advisory Committee, and it being reviewed by us in a meeting like we had tonight, it would go to those other bodies directly. And there's the way in fact, for a moment I read it and I said, wow, this goes backwards, because suddenly now all these applications go in front of all these boards, committees, and commissions if they're involved in groundwater. And in some way, they wouldn't need to, the way we have it structured now, they don't, we don't involve the entire body that we represent. And so it is pretty streamlined for the applicants. Now, I don't think, and Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the intent of the planning board was to then have the applications, explicitly farmed out to the other boards and committees. I think they're really looking to consolidate it to be, if the SPGA is the planning board, just to the planning board. If it's to the ZBA, just to the ZBA. Of course, with the caveat that anybody can, attend the public hearing. But that was kind of the impression I was getting from the latest conversations.
Well, I think I don't know if I interrupted somebody. I think it's important to note that right now, when the application comes in, there are a lot of copies that get submitted to the town clerk's office, and they get distributed to each of the boards and committees and departments for review. How it gets to the individual members of each committee, I'm not quite clear on. I know with me and this committee, I send them all to you directly. I think the copy that comes for the earthwork board, for instance, I just put it on as an agenda item and just say, this is for your information. This project was submitted to the ZBA on such and such a day. And I put it on the agenda as just a line item. And then when they have their meeting, they might say, hey, Fred, what's this? And I tell them that it doesn't need to come before them yet, because that board in particular gets to look at projects at the very end of the process of the permitting process, just prior to construction. But I give them a brief rundown on what the project is about and who's at the time and the status of with the other various boards. I'm not quite sure how the Conservation Commission gets to the rest of the commission, what projects are before the ZBA. It's not as critical because most of the time there's an application submitted directly to the Conservation Commission that's exactly the same as the one that went to the ZBA, but asking for an order of conditions from that board. It's more helpful to, like, the Board of Health or the Water and Sewer Commission or the Board of Selectmen, who might not see a project that's just before the Planning Board or the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Conservation Commission. You might not be aware of it if the staff person doesn't put it on the agenda and say, hey, this is happening, you got any comments? That reach out to the board members that don't typically see applications like this could evolve to something more, and it could be put on your agenda as an agenda item, or it could be note to the chair saying, hey, this came in, do you want it on the agenda, or do you want copies of the application to go to each member of the board so they can all make comments and we can forward them on to the SBGA later on? I think the planning board, in the brief discussion we had last meeting, was they wanted to get that, make sure that the members of the groundwater committee and the boards that they represent weren't circumvented. They weren't trying to cut them out. They were trying to eliminate some duplication of effort and some redundancy in the process, where they acknowledge that I do a review letter for you, you look at the review letter, you add some comments, or tell me to send it on to the ZBA or the planning board, or whichever the case, and thought that by eliminating that step, it might streamline the process. So Anthony can chime in if I've overstepped or mis-summarized, but that's kind of what I took from it. So it wasn't trying to eliminate all the other boards. It was more of a streamlining of the process for the applicants.
Yep, I'd agree.
So I guess I was, reading it literally, right? In that, there's, if the applications are going to the, let's say, select board, Board of Selectmen, I don't think they're not going to the members. They might, copies might be going to the associated staff or department. So it's getting copies are sent to the department that board, committee, or commission is associated with, but they're certainly not going to the members, or at least once. And so if I wasn't a representative, a member of this committee, I wouldn't see him as a member of the select board. If this committee goes away, then I would really want to see the explicit notification to the boards, the committee, and commission members, as opposed to just sitting within a department where it may or may not, depending on the staff, know what the members might be, being able to bring to the review of that application. I certainly got the impression that the dissolution of this committee was a way to remove the review of other boards, committees, and commissions. And so that's really what I'm sensitive to, is the severing of the potential that our disciplines review these applications. And that's basically the questions I'm going to ask during the public hearings with the planning board, is to make sure that elements of conservation, elements of public health are still able to review those applications as we do now.
Okay, well, first, I want to clarify one thing. I know that Lori sent an email to all of you with the draft language that's going before the planning board on January 17th about the current zoning articles that have been advertised and the public hearing is going to be held. And then the very rough draft language that hasn't really been before the planning board yet for the article regarding the dissolution of the Groundwater Advisory Committee they're going to talk about on the 17th. It will be advertised and there'll be a public hearing for that zoning amendment to be held on February 7th. And I believe she invited you all to come and bring other members of the board to that public hearing and share your thoughts. And I think that the discussion tonight is good to have and it goes towards that. So the actual process of when the application gets submitted, the distribution list that we have when an application comes in, goes to the town clerk's office, goes to various departments, goes to all the departments. It does go to the Board of Selectmen. How it gets, where it goes from there could be something that needs to be discussed at the individual board level. Or it's something that we talk about at the February 7th meeting about making it more explicit in the actual zoning bylaw about what's supposed to happen to it once it gets submitted. You know, does it go to the actual members of the board from the town clerk's office, who is the one who receives the application, or does it just go to the staff person for the selectmen, the administrator's office, and then internally the Board of Selectmen needs to direct that person to give them all to you, have some discretion? There's different ways it could be done. Clearly it could be done better, as not just you, Scott, but throughout my tenure here, the member from the Board of Selectmen who sat on the Groundwater Advisory Committee, and it has been a very common theme from almost all of them that they enjoyed the Groundwater Advisory Committee and sitting on it because it gave them a chance to see projects that were coming to town that they might not otherwise know about unless they went to a planning board meeting or they saw something on an agenda.
And that's kind of my point. Yeah,
But
historically.
it's not just you.
Unless we
Many
cover
members of the Board of Selectmen found it to be enjoyable, and some years ago, it was something that was assigned to a junior member from the Board of Selectmen or a new member, and then they would move on to something more, I don't want to use the word more important, but I would say something different. And they would go around to because you have lots of boards and committee assignments that you're liaisons to. This is the only committee where each member sits as a liaison to this committee, is on the committee, as opposed to just being a liaison, sitting in the audience and listening. You're actually a committee member, and it's
which I
different.
think belies its importance then, and that's why I'm putting forward and making sure that each of the impacted bodies consider this and discuss it, because we're not, as we're characterized as the last planning board meeting, we're not 5 random people in a hospital waiting room and Fred's the radiologist. We bring professional disciplines to the review of these applications, and there's important work that's been done here. Look at this meeting tonight. Did we add extra things to Fred's technical evaluation? Maybe not, right? But we had eyes on it, and if there was something that was of concern, we would have discussed it from the perspective of our particular disciplines. Teresa, you had a thought earlier.
I did. I know that many of the boards have already met and discussed this. Board of Health won't meet until the 17th, which of course is the same night as planning board. So, my board hasn't reviewed it, but I guess it's important to note that the Board of Health has jurisdiction for the most part over private wells in town, as well as the groundwater that services those wells. And there's a lot of them, and I wouldn't downplay the importance of our well systems and the groundwater overlay districts, because those wells still need protection. Our public wells may be offline, but they're not decommissioned. And I will never profess to be an environmentalist and understand, environmental changes in the world, but I look at what's happening in the southwest part of the country and the droughts that they are going through over an accumulation of drought and time. And now so far this winter, we've had a good amount of rain, but the last 2 years we've been in a drought condition where I could see that, if you pass by any of the reservoirs, they're low. And, I don't want to say we'll never need these wells again. It might actually be more beneficial for us at some point in the future, and who knows when that is, to put them back online and use them than to count on scarce resources from MWRA. And so I think it's important to not discount the importance of these wells when we're talking about, what the importance of this committee is. And that's just, that's what I'm going to tell my committee, my Board of Health next week. That's the recommendation I'm going to give. I think that you leave it into the hands of the special permit granting authority. They don't have the same perspectives because that's not what their job is at that time. I think these five of us bring some different perspective that's very important to the groundwater overlay districts. And if the planning board really believes that's not the case and it's not necessary, then maybe they want to consider just eliminating the overlay districts and decommissioning the wells. I mean, if they think that that's not going to be an issue, I guess they could just go that far and do that. I think that's an extreme perspective, but I don't think that enough foresight's been put into environmentally what could be happening given our weather conditions and the fact that we have a lot of private wells in this town that get affected by the decisions that we make on this committee. That's it.
And then I'm thinking back to
I agree with that. I have no qualms with that. That's a good position. It would be more the people with the private wells that would be impacted. Quabbin Reservoir hasn't been less than full for the last 100 years. So we always have that as a public water supply. But I agree that the private wells deserve some attention.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking too, Diane, in your comments, you talked about, just the collective experience across all the boards, committees, and commissions. And so, beyond just our individual perspective in the disciplines, you're right, Diane, a lot of historical knowledge if you count up all the members across these different groups. There's quite a bit of experience and knowledge of past projects and sections of town, based on the work that the service that's been performed throughout. So thanks for providing that perspective as well.
Well, I have to admit that when I first came to town, it was the committee that helped me gain some perspective of how much of a worst case scenario we need to be concerned about when reviewing projects, because it was new for me. It wasn't something that I'd worked with before, a groundwater advisory committee. Most towns have an aquifer protection overlay district with some restrictions. Northborough is a little bit more complicated than most and is a little bit more far-reaching about the types of businesses and the limits on impervious cover, all of which is important, and it is the way other communities, I think, are going. Impervious cover is a huge thing with the Clean Water Act, the stormwater mitigation, land disturbance permits that we're being asked to adopt and adhere to by the EPA. So it's the bylaw itself is important and needs to stay. I think the town would be extremely remiss if they were to do away with the bylaw. The committee, it's not my call. It's not my call. I enjoy working with all of you. I've told the planning board that I think the committee has merit, and I do agree that using a peer review for certain projects that have significant potential impacts is not a bad thing. But I think the committee serves a purpose, and I see no reason to do away with it. But again, it's not my call. And we can go forward from there. It's a interesting discussion is brewing for February 7th, I believe. And I think that everyone's concerned, specifically yours, Scott, about how the various other boards get the information and what they do with it is something that we can talk about, whether it's in the bylaw or internally in the procedure from when the application gets submitted, how it gets distributed, who it gets distributed to, how extensive it is spread out. That's certainly something that can be modified to get to everyone. But again, I've always enjoyed working with the Groundwater Committee, and don't have any problem continuing on that way.
Is there any future possibility that these, I know all the material that comes in and goes out to each board could be just one piece of material and it's digested by someone who would read it, and then each board could pick it up online? Is that a future possibility maybe?
Well, we are getting more and more applications submitted electronically, and the planning board and the staff for the planning board, the town planning director and the staff person is taking that and putting it up on the planning board's page. Much like tonight's meeting where I sent you all the applications, that was just a link to the planning board's page or the ZBA's page, indicating that this is where you can find the stuff, because it saved me quite a bit of work of having to scan it all and put it in a folder and then send it to all of you and worry about the size. If it's posted online, you can go there and look at it without chewing up all the storage on your own personal computer unless you wanted to save it. And then, as always, if somebody sees something online, they can make a request for a paper copy, and then committee members don't get charged, but the residents might for whatever the volume of paper that it might generate. We don't post the 600 pages of MSDS sheets online.
But you can
Because nobody wants to
post
look
it.
at that.
They were there online, and I was able to review them, so
Yeah.
it was good.
But there's a way for that to happen, Diane, to answer your question briefly. Yes, we get them electronically. We're getting them all electronically now for the ZBA and the planning board. I don't know about the Conservation Commission or the Board of Health or the Water and Sewer Commission, if they're getting all their applications submitted electronically or not. I just know that the bigger ones that ultimately I need to review for all of you, able to get it to you that way, which is a help to me and hopefully to you.
Yeah, I think tactically, when we look at updating this particular language, I think we'll redefine what, transmit one copy each means. And
Yeah.
I think we'll talk more about posting and notifying.
Yeah.
So to close this out, there's some, next steps and what happened, but or what happens next, but I want to give everybody a chance for any last comments or thoughts. Okay, good. So, what happens next, as we mentioned, there's some upcoming meetings, Board of Health, Conservation Commission. There's then the planned public hearing for the warrant articles that will open later in January, but this particular article will be discussed on the February 7th. And so that'll be the public hearing for that, where, individually, we can attend. I would say if something comes out of the remaining commission or board meetings, that as a body, some letter, comment, memo to the planning board, that's up to that particular body. But at the moment, it's individual action, unless the remaining board and commission wants to do something as such. I think that's it. Any other business for us tonight, Fred?
Nope, I don't have anything. Just thank you all. I will make the I will let you know if I have anything for you to review on February 16th. At this point, I'm not aware of any applications, but the deadline for the February ZBA meeting is not for a couple more weeks. So the planning board, they're pretty wrapped up in right now the high school and then the zoning articles, and I'm not aware of any other major projects coming in the very near future, but we meet with people all the time. Nobody ever tells us exactly when they're going to file until they filed.
Fair enough. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
And a second out there somewhere.
Second.
Second,
Thanks, Diane. Roll call vote, of course, to get out of here. Teresa,
Aye.
Anthony,
I
Bryant,
Yes.
and Diane said yes. Thank you very much. I am also yes. Thank you very much for the work this evening. All look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year.
yeah.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.